Hi everyone, welcome to Ecommerce Exchange. This is the podcast for anyone involved or interested in online retail and marketing. As you can see, we're not in our usual studio this month as we're all waiting for the lockdown to end. So we're going to have deliveries coming at random moments. We've got the obligatory dog walking around. I had to shave my head, but rest assured I'm not in my pajamas, so fully clothed for this one. In this episode, we're going to be talking to Kerri Barnes, who's Partnerships Manager at LoyaltyLion. Hello, Kerri.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for joining us. LoyaltyLion is a loyalty engagement platform for online retailers. And also we have our marketing director, Lewis. Hello, Lewis.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay. I'm not doing too badly.
Good. So we're not going to focus too much on the pandemic as such. However, it is relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. Before we kicked off, I just wanted to ask you a quick question, Kerri.
Mm-hmm.
When talking about the pandemic, do you prefer to talk about strange times, unprecedented times, uncertain times, or difficult times?
Gosh, well, these are all buzzwords we're hearing again and again, aren't we? I'd go with uncertain. I wouldn't say it's been difficult for everybody, but I'd say everybody's feeling that uncertainty right now, whether that's positive or otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. You did a serious answer as well. That was good.
Yeah, well.
You could say unprecedented, but then if you happen to have an interaction with someone who had gone through the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
unprecedented for them. It's fine anyway. We've got plenty of light and or bleach that's going to get through it, and that's all we need.
Thank you, Donald.
So if we have a chat then about, so from LoyaltyLion's perspective, Kerri, over the past couple of months, kind of what have you noticed trend-wise? Has anything changed from how brands are retaining customers and attracting new customers?
Yeah, well, I'd actually say over the last couple of months, so we've been obviously analysing the situation on a weekly basis just to see what's been going on with our merchants. And we've noticed there has been a real shift in the way people are looking at loyalty. So people are actually focusing much more time and effort on increasing the retention of their existing customers, just because the cost of acquisition have become that much more extreme as all of these retailers have moved online. They're focusing on online rather than the offline function. Those acquisition costs are just going through the roof essentially. So yeah, we're seeing a much bigger focus on these loyal existing customers to protect the bottom line.
Have you I mean, we've definitely noticed this from our side with this particular subset of clients, and it's something that I think we've all probably helped to move along. Is a lot of our clients, certainly in the first, maybe after the first week and up to date, saw quite a sharp increase in revenue, in traffic. From an e-commerce perspective, people who were kind of already ingrained in e-commerce, we saw a lot of positive effects from a revenue bottom line traffic point of view. Is that the same for you guys? Have you seen that there's been an influx in certain areas or specific areas where you have seen an increase?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been a rise of a certain number of industries that have just seen unparalleled growth to what you would normally expect at this time of year. We're calling this group of merchants the new essentials. So you'll probably be ticking these off your list, but the food and beverage subscriptions, booze goes into that as well, of course. Pet supplies, household goods. I don't know if either of you have picked up any arty, crafty hobbies at all recently, but those guys are doing really, really well. Yeah. Baby, athleisure brands, that kind of thing.
Athleisure, definitely. I think that's one of the areas where we're talking to people at the moment who almost just at the very start of their journey and just almost hit it just right to get the home workout market, which I think just exploded over the past couple of months with gyms closing. So I think it kind of leads on quite nicely to that retention piece you're talking about in loyalty programs, because one of the things that we're trying to figure out how we counteract now that we're in the middle of this is that we're seeing this big boom in sales. How the questions they're asking are, will this remain as hot as it is now? Will sales remain as buoyant as they have been? Basically, what happens as things start to reopen and the market starts to shift back to something that resembles normality? And how do we stop a significant tank of kind of sales in these specific markets post COVID, I suppose?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys tuned into Shopify Reunite, but they actually said there was, I think, a 45% increase in buying from stores that customers had never bought from before. So what these merchants are experiencing is a huge rise in new customers, and this is a really exciting opportunity. But yeah, as a result of that, one of the biggest problems that they're experiencing right now is a lot of guest checkouts, and if all of these new customers aren't creating an account, it's going to be that much more difficult to retain them in the long run. So from our perspective, you want to be turning these guest purchases into account holders, because the moment they create a loyalty program account, for instance, they are 68% more likely to buy from you again versus somebody that hasn't created an account. So if you want to focus on turning this big increase into a benefit in the long run, you want to focus on that initial conversion, turning them into a loyalty program member or an account holder.
I was wondering as well because we've talked about these new essentials and brands having a lot of new customers. I was wondering if a lot of these new customers are actually new to e-commerce as well. So I was reading about, for example, there's been a shift in the over 40s who were perhaps a bit of a reluctant sector in shopping online. But now, because of what's happened, they've been forced to try it out. Perhaps they've realized it's actually not as daunting as they thought it was. So I was wondering if these, part of the challenge now is to embed that behavior. So when people are able to go to the shops again, will they go back to that old behavior, or will they revert to that, or will they continue to be part of this new group of people who will be happy to shop online? And that's where the brands can maybe capitalize on capturing those new customers, not only to them, but to the whole idea of online commerce, really.
So yeah, I mean, as a brand, you want to be offering as much of a seamless omni-channel experience as you can anyway. So if you're used to having an online and an offline function, now you've got all these people that are coming online, you want to be able to make sure that they will still be able to use your online and offline functions compatibly after this is all over. But obviously it is a lot more convenient for the customer if they're going to be using the online function of your store after this. So it's just making sure that you're able to keep the messaging consistent. So whether that's in emails after they've made their purchase online, keeping them connected to the brand, keeping them part of this brand community, whether that's like on Facebook, joining a Facebook group, that kind of thing, keeping them aware of what's going on that way.
So I think one of the and I guess one of the general things that you'll get, and one of the things that we find from a loyalty perspective, in fact, across the board with any kind of marketing that's thinking about a multitude of different tactics, loyalty is always one of those things where people go, yeah, we really want to do that. But right now what we need to do is drive sales and drive revenue. I'm assuming that's something you hear day in and day out. So I think we're realizing how much sooner that loyalty program or that loyalty aspect needs to start now. It's something that you almost need to be communicating with consumers from the very, very beginning. So what do you guys see as the first step of a loyalty program, if you like? So yes, there's going to be new brands that are, almost just starting out or have just hit the market prior to the market shifting quite significantly, and they're almost all new customers. There's going to be existing brands who already have a customer base, but also are seeing a big influx of new consumers, and potentially existing brands that are just seeing a lot more regular repeat purchases just because that's the space that we're in at the moment. So for people who are right at the beginning of the process, and they don't have a loyalty program and they're seeing a huge influx of new consumers, and and probably dealing with lots of other logistic issues, like how to fulfill the amount of orders they're getting, how to implement queuing systems on their website, all of the things that people didn't realize they had to think about because this never happens. Where does loyalty fit into that, and how do people almost get started with it?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are lots of different stages of the customer journey where you could implement loyalty for it to have an impact. So we've talked about that first time visitor to your site. You want to turn them into an account holder with maybe an on-site notification, or just by simply giving them some points for creating an account in the first place. So even if it's not big steps like making a huge purchase, if after that first purchase they have enough points to come back and create to redeem another reward with you, that's a really good way to start off with first time customers. But using a loyalty program in a slightly different way, it's really important for you to know who your most loyal customers are. So generally speaking, when you look at your customer base, it's just the top 20% who are generating over half of your revenue. So if you're able to identify this segment, who they are, and you can do that with a loyalty program. You can treat them like real VIPs. You can encourage them to be advocates of your brand, whether that's leaving you a review or leaving you a referral. Using your loyalty program to identify that loyal customer segment and really nurture them, that's going to have really big impacts in terms of sales for sure.
Awesome.
Do you think there's been any shift in expectation from the consumer? People are kind of not necessarily that loyal by nature. So, you know, the brands have a challenge to keep them coming back, like we're saying. But do you think that expectations are higher now in terms of next day delivery, customer service, that kind of thing? Do you think people have to step up from that point of view in order to retain their customers as well?
I mean, absolutely. I think the demand for excellent customer experience is on the rise. I think we held a survey not too long ago, and I think 80% of our customer base that we asked said that they wanted an increase in customer experience, because you're having to compete with the likes of Amazon Prime, who will just get you your order for the next day, and it isn't necessarily realistic for you to expect a small to medium-sized brand to deliver in these fronts, particularly in the times like now when you're having to wait 2 weeks for your mum's letter to arrive in the post, that kind of thing. So I think people are being quite accepting and quite allowing, but it's delivering excellent customer experience in other ways. So making them feel loyal to the brand by creating a community of like-minded individuals that's attentive, that's communicative as well. That is the best way, I would say, because you can't necessarily compete with next day delivery on these fronts.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Because we've talked a lot about advocacy marketing and how to create advocates in the past. And fundamentally, if you try and compete with anyone else on basically things that I would describe as features and functions, so things like next day delivery, things like the cheapest cost, essentially everyone in e-commerce is competing with Amazon, no matter what you're selling, no matter how niche you think you are. People are either putting their own product on Amazon, which is its own kind of risk, or Amazon have created or sell a similar product. So no matter what you're doing within e-commerce, you're competing with Amazon. I remember reading a stat, this was a couple of years back, but it was something like the e-commerce market in America was worth X billion dollars. However, it's a largely irrelevant figure because 80% of that was purely Amazon anyway. So the e-commerce market is massively bloated just by Amazon being part of it. So you're always competing with Amazon, but if you try and compete with them on things like delivery time, cost of product, even customer service to an extent, that they're don't always do it particularly well, but they've got a large team and very quick response times and lots of different ways to get in touch. You're almost always going to lose that fight because they've got deeper pockets, they're willing to make a loss on products, and they have such a large network of logistics that it is possible for them to deliver within 2 days. Generally, they've struggled a little bit more during the past couple of months, but still for essentials delivering very, very quickly. So I suppose this is where things like loyalty programs and what can you do that Amazon can't beat you at? Those are the questions you've got to ask, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just back to that age-old argument: transactional versus emotional relationships. If you're teaching your customers that they can come to you for the cheapest brand of trainers, then they might find it somewhere else for a bit cheaper the next day, and they're not going to buy with you. They'll buy with the person that's offering it for a lower price. So those aren't the kind of behaviors that you want to be encouraging from your customer base.
And you mentioned the brand community thing, which doesn't exist from Amazon's point of view, does it? I know a lot of people who buy from Amazon who are not keen on it as an entity, but just do it for convenience. So I was wondering, what kind of things do you think you could do to kind of enhance and grow that community feel within a brand? I saw Netflix have launched Netflix Party, for example. That could be an example of how they bring their users together to use the platform as a group. I was wondering what kind of ideas there could be for other brand community building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have some clients using us where their entire brand is centered around veganism and recycling and ethical clothing, that kind of thing. So they have a VIP communities on Facebook where all of the customers can get involved, talk on Facebook. They actually get rewarded for taking by the merchants. They'll get loyalty points for taking part in a recycling program, that kind of thing. So it's a good way to be creating a community in that respect. Also with the emailing as well. So I've had a few emails come through where, again, they're just really kind of saying, hey, we're going through a difficult time. It's not necessarily a message about sales, but we're all going through a difficult time. Here, have a few points as a perk, as a little pick me up, that kind of thing. We're thinking of you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that recently, actually.
I'm just going to point out, by the way, that
don't mention that you're a vegan.
Veganism was brought up in this call, and it wasn't me that brought it up. And also, just as a message to all vegan brands, just as a message to all vegan brands, do not do an offer whereby you give people points for mentioning that they're a vegan.
No, nobody needs more of that encouragement.
I thought this was the first day since lockdown I was going to get through a day without hearing Lewis bang on about being a vegan, but no, Kerri, you had to bring it up, didn't you?
Sorry about that one.
Actually, fault Kerri for bringing up vegan and sustainable brands. So
growing in popularity. So they
are. That's what all the cool kids are doing. Eating plant-based. Anyway, sorry. Back to what we were talking about. Sorry, I had to get my little vegan segment in there. That will not be edited.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So the community piece is really interesting, I think. That I suppose what you're talking about is almost the incentivization of community, or the encouraging of community-based actions to get people more involved with a brand. I think there's probably a step before that as well, where, connected to what we were saying before, is you can't create a community based on just features and functions because or things that can be copied. Essentially, it can't be transactional because that can be copied, or you can be undercut by someone else somewhere further down the line. Community has to be about something more emotional. And I think as a brand, if you are not very early on talking about what you stand for on an emotional level, why your product was created, if you're not talking to your audience about the why behind what you do, that's where you struggle, I think, to create community. Because otherwise, if you're creating a loyalty program based on that kind of thing, or trying to build a community, if you don't have those emotional aspects, essentially you're dependent on points for pounds, right? You spend with us, you get points back. There's no other action that you can get people to do, because it's much more difficult. If you've got a series of things that run through the core of your brand, emotional things, then you can start to tie those to encourage the behaviors that you expect in yourself as a business, in your community, things that your consumers resonate that's why they buy from you as a brand, because they agree with X, Y, and Z, or they're looking for a product that matches their emotional needs. It becomes much easier to create a community then, right? Because you can just, it's behaviors that people are already doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rewarding them for it anyway. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, that's exactly nail on the head there. You've got to be communicating your brand message from the get-go, and in all of your communications as well, all of the emails, all of your loyalty messaging. Yeah, and in uncertain times like these, people want to feel connected as well, which is why they're going back to these brands. So yeah, as long as you're capitalizing on that and really communicating.
It's true. I've had a bit of a soft spot for some of the smaller brands since this has all happened, and we're making more of an effort to to go to buy from kind of independent shops and smaller businesses, and then kind of keep going back to those guys. I don't know if that's another kind of temporary shift in behaviour that's as a result of what's going on at the moment, or whether I'll go back to Tesco when it's all finished. But for now, at least, I'm trying to be a bit more conscious about who I'm buying from and what they represent and that kind of thing, and the way that they can convey their message.
I feel like the mix is, again, we don't really know. And I think we were talking about the other day, that's right, I decided, I'd made the silly decision. I said, I'm not going to trim my beard until this thing is over, right? In my head, thinking at the time that there would be a date at which go, okay, that's done now, and we move forward. And what we're slowly realizing is this is actually going to be much more of a phased shift back to something, rather than a solid cut-off date where we say, okay, everything is normal again now. So I think what we'll probably see as this starts to fade away is much more of a mix of how people are purchasing. So there will inevitably be a return to normal. In some aspects, people will likely continue to buy their groceries in a similar way. Maybe more people will shift to online. But I think for me, certainly, and this is all anecdotal at the moment, but for me, certainly, it's felt like there's been much more of a discovery of brands now. Mm-hmm. People are browsing a lot more and discovering new things and things that resonate with them. I know I have been kind of going out there and actively searching for things that I would have bought out of convenience before, but almost because I have the time to go and look for something that more accurately represents what it is that I want. And this could be something as simple as, I don't know, soap, for example. I'm kind of discovering new things and purchasing and trying, and then saying, okay, I'm just going to buy that now forever. That's what I'm going to do. And that thing is removed. That's my new normal now. So I think rather than return to normalcy, we're going to see a return to, what do we call these people? The new
essentials.
New essentials. I think some of that stuff, the new normal, will be slightly different to the old normal. And I think people will continue to buy certain things from local, more select, more niche brands. But inevitably, am I ever going to get all of my fruit and veg from a local farm every single week? Or am I sometimes going to want something that's not seasonal? Probably, just because that's human nature, right? I'm still going to become much more convenient and more cost effective for me to get all that stuff from Aldi than it is from, a local farmer. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the nicest thing, but the reality of it is I think some things will come down to convenience again, and other things will come down to how well a brand has communicated and kind of drawn you in.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there when you said it's a discovery phase. And I think merchants really need to look at this as a huge opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have been given, these smaller merchants. It's you've got people who are spending more time looking for themselves. You've got people that are spending more time actually recommending their favorite brands to their friends as well. So this is, for the smaller merchants, it can be seen as a really great opportunity to try and retain these customers that they wouldn't have otherwise acquired had this not happened.
I mean, even Shopify's done this, right? They created the Shop app where they were highlighting, new or kind of new merchants or merchants that were on the Shopify platform, and essentially correlating all of that Shopify data into a single app and kind of helping people to go through that discovery phase. So I think it's really interesting because it's always, in the framework that we use for marketing, we call it the seek phase, the discovery phase. So people searching out for a solution for a problem. And I think that's just extended now, and people have that little bit more time to go out and do that. There's obviously lots of people in lots of different situations. Some people massively trying to cut back on what they're spending, where there's other people who are now very, very time rich, and they haven't seen a particularly seen a drop in their incoming. So, for me, for example, I no longer have to commute. So the spare money there that I've been spending on sweets and whatever else I can buy online, things that I just have time to go through and get. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really interesting. I like that people are getting to discover new brands, but I think you're absolutely right that could very quickly fade away for those brands if you don't do something to really align yourself with kind of ongoing customer needs, especially if what you've sold is like one of these new essentials where it's, I need it from you now, but I might not need it from you forever. How do I maintain that customer in what will become the new normal? Mm-hmm. So you said in a kind of, as we were discussing this before, you said 22% of members become inactive, lose interest if it takes too long to earn points or unlock rewards. I suppose lapsing loyalty members or lapsing customers in general feeds into that kind of thought process quite nicely. So what kind of things would you recommend people do, number one, to maintain them in a loyalty program, but just in terms of maintaining them as a customer, full stop?
Yeah, I mean, this just kind of goes back to the traditional approach to loyalty when people only incentivize spend. Well, that's great, particularly if you're a brand. If you have quite long gaps of time between purchases, it doesn't give you the chance to engage with your customer. It doesn't give you the time to build that relationship with the customer. So you want to be encouraging engagement with the brand as well in general. So it doesn't have to be a purchase, but anything that could be beneficial. So that could be getting them using your hashtag on Instagram, getting them to share interesting posts of yours with their community, leaving reviews. These are all different activities that can help you build better relationships with your customers across all channels.
Okay. So what do you think the biggest challenge that people will have with that kind of, if you do have something where potentially it's a long lead time between one purchase and another, how are you finding that your brands that are working with you guys are managing that in between? I know you give a couple of examples there, but is it very much content led as opposed to sales led?
Yeah, I would say definitely content led, for sure. Yeah, and as long as, if we're using the loyalty program as an example, a good way to engage with customers between purchases is rather than running big sales, maybe you want to give them status updates, so their points balance, what rewards they have available, any new rewards, keeping them reminded of different ways they can engage with the brand and be rewarded for it. So yeah, I'd definitely say content led rather than sales driven. But if you're wanting to generate more hype around the brand and more traffic to the website, rather than maybe sales led promotions, which can often have the negative side effect of devaluing the brand a lot of the time, you can run things like double points promotions or triple points days. It's a good way to create a similar buzz without actually having to compromise your price points too much.
Yeah, I suppose with one of the other things that I've seen in the past, especially when people are selling physical products or things that aren't consumable, it's not necessarily the highest value thing right now, and not necessarily one of those new essentials, but making sure people are getting the most out of the product. The amount of times, I don't know, you might buy a Wi-Fi extender for your house or something, and then you kind of never plug it in, or you never set it up, or people really don't get the most out of the product. So they're never going to be a return consumer because you haven't even made sure that they, number one, understand how the product works. Number two, make sure they get the most out of it. Alexa's a really good example of this, the Amazon Echo. 2 years on from buying mine, I still get a weekly email that says, ask Alexa to tell you a joke, or making sure she's not flashing up or anything. But they're constantly trying to make sure you're getting the most out of the product. So I think where there is something that you deliver to people, and there's potentially a long period of time before their next purchase, I think understanding how long that period of time is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I know loyalty programs can help with that in terms of, or even just standard Shopify data or analytics data, to understand how often your customers are returning, what your returning customer rate is, and how many people are purchasing on more than one occasion, and what the time is between that. If you understand that, then you can start to set up some automations around that return purchase. And in between that time, start to use some of the standard customer questions from your customer service team, the FAQs on your site, start to build out that almost knowledge hub around your product or your service or whatever it is you're offering, and start to deliver those to people before they're asking for it. That's going to build, even without a loyalty program. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have one, because everyone obviously should. But even without that, you build a sense of loyalty, right? You build a sense of relationship with the brand, because they're just constantly in contact with you. They're constantly making sure, even just an email to say, hey, this is, you can get us on live chat, or you can email us here if you've got any questions, but here's a list of common questions we get with this particular product. I think people miss out on that, and it's so easy to set up through just email automation on almost any email service provider. Klaviyo.digital, probably even MailChimp, for the people who are still on that, can set up those kind of automations, just to say, if people buy at this point, send them these 5 emails over the next 3 months, and then in 3 months' time, remind them that they've probably ran out of the thing that they just bought and they should buy again. But you're never out of contact for that whole time. And if you add loyalty into that, it's like, well, we can attach actions or behaviors to each one of those automations and reward people for taking action, whether that's sharing a product review, or whether it's sharing a company review, or sharing something with a particular hashtag. All of these things are possible with loyalty points, right?
And yeah, even just sharing a bit of company news as well. Like, if these are people who've bought into the emotional message of a brand, they might want to hear about the latest and greatest that they've been up to over the last however many months. But yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, that it is important to keep in contact with these customers who maybe you haven't heard from in the last few months. So these are customers that they've bought with you before. They trust you enough to have bought with you before. They know your brand, so they are that much easier to convert than a brand new customer who's never bought from you before. So you don't want to let these guys just fall off your radar. So if you can identify them properly and target them appropriately, then yeah, I think it's a really good shout.
And those,
it's the right message at the right time, isn't it? Basically,
definitely, yeah. And those customers who have already bought from you, as well as being the easiest customers to continue to convert on an ongoing basis, probably your most powerful marketing tool. So, just from a, we talked about creating advocates, but just nudging people to refer, incentivizing people to refer. That's got to be one of the most powerful ways to increase your customer base, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly at the moment. So I think I mentioned earlier, we've been monitoring our program use over the last few months, and the engagement with the referral tool has really increased. So it's been over an 100% increase at the end of April versus the end of February for points given for referrals. So people are referring their friends right now, and you're much more likely to make a purchase if you have been referred by a trusted friend or family member. So this is a channel that you really want to tap into for your acquisition, particularly right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's companies across a whole range of different industries that do this really well. Bulb is a really good example. The energy company, it's all about providing energy to households through sustainable means, renewable energy sources. But what they do is, essentially, if you refer a friend, it's not points based, but money based. It's we'll give your friend £50 and we'll give you £50 off your energy bills. It's really clever actually, because number one, it's super easy to do, but secondly, it doesn't really cost them anything right up front, because it, you know, you still pay the same amount as you would do for your energy bills over time. It almost just adds a little bit of credit to your account should you go over slightly. But this has been happening since, you know, Grays was probably one of the most referenced people to do this way back when, where it was, I think if somebody signed up using your referral link, you got £1 or something like that.
Yeah, the two-way incentive is a really powerful way to get people involved.
And I think it feels like it's a bit of a marketing secret, but it shouldn't be, because it's common sense that if I like something, then the likelihood of my group of friends having a similar set of behaviours is quite high. It's much more likely that my group of friends is going to like a similar set of things to me, rather than, you know, some person who isn't related to your existing customer base.
Yeah, I think people are often quite nervous about how much they're giving away, because when you see it written down here, you say, okay, right, I'm giving that person £10 off, I'm giving that person £10 off. Wow, this is getting expensive. So you've got merchants that might be a little apprehensive to start off with a referral strategy like that. But you've just got to look at how many times you have to target these people in the first place. If you're not using some kind of word of mouth referral, can get very expensive that way around. So yeah, it's just making sure that you've figured out what kind of metrics are going to drive a reward, and what's actually attractive to the customers as well.
I think when you get down to the numbers of it, though, if you look at it logically, there shouldn't be any more nervousness around giving £5 or £10 away to two customers than there is through acquiring a customer through paid media, for example. You have a cost per acquisition that you are willing to spend to acquire a new customer. Or certainly, you know, any brands that we work with, if we're doing PPC or paid social, part of our job is to figure out what a profitable number is for acquiring new customers. You know, so for a high value product that's £300-400, we might be able to spend £30, £40 or £50 to acquire a new customer. For a low value product, it might be £1 that we've got to spend to acquire a new customer. But either way, if you understand, one, what your kind of actual margin is, and two, what the lifetime value of your customers are, then you can quite easily figure out what you'd be willing to spend. And that's all referral marketing is. It's you treat it the same as paid media. It's just that the audience is significantly more closed and probably much more of a warm lead than anything else you're going to do, because that's all that algorithms like Facebook do. When you create a lookalike audience, it's like, take your current customer base, people who've already purchased from you, and show me a wider pool of people who show a similar set of behaviors, and we're going to market to them. It's absolutely no different. It's just that Facebook's doing it on a much larger scale, and potentially with less tangible data points. But yeah, I think if you figure out what your margin is, how much you can afford to spend to acquire a customer, even if you are giving a £1 value as a referral, then it should be similar to your cost per acquisition figure from a paid media point of view, or the margin that you would get from the lifetime value of a customer over a specific period of time, for example. So at least you're breaking even from that perspective on your first order or so. Yep. If you do it with points, it feels a little bit less painful, I would expect, from a merchant point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Because
particularly when these can be redeemed on something that isn't necessarily a monetary reward.
Like we'll plant a tree for you in the Amazon or something if you use 100 points or something.
Yeah.
There's somebody's done that, right? I'm sure I'm not just making that up.
Yeah, no, we've got some really fab custom rewards that some of our merchants use. It's all about the brand building exercise. So yeah, planting trees, donating dog booties. Gosh, what other things have they done? I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, really good initiatives there. But yeah, even if it's just, not a monetary discount or a percentage, if you're chucking in a free product as a reward, they have a much higher perceived value than they actually are. So that's a good way for the merchant to introduce new product ranges, but also the customer thinks they've got a much better deal than they have.
Okay, awesome.
Just to confirm, dog booties are shoes for dogs?
Yes, not bums. Yeah, I can see the confusion.
Only in Matt's mind. It's like the points in this podcast that I'm going to have to edit. I said to you prior to this, I don't want to have to go through and pick this apart and have to edit bits in the middle. And then what you've gone and done is started talking about dog bums.
I didn't mention dog bums.
I thought that's what you were hinting at.
So one of the final things that you mentioned in the prep for this call, yes, the call was prepped unbelievably, is is the customer segmentation piece. So I think we've gone through various bits and bobs. So from your perspective, from a loyalty perspective, we obviously think customer segmentation is massively important across everything we do: email, even personalization, on-site, advertising, ensuring that we're essentially giving the right message to the right people at the right time, depending on where they are in their customer journey. So from a loyalty perspective, what does that look like for you?
So yeah, there are 3 clear segments that you want to be focusing on. So you've got your loyal segment, you've got your at-risk segment, so those that haven't returned to shop with you within an expected given time frame, and those that have lapsed, but you could then target to win back. So again, they're easier to convert than first time customers. So you want to make sure you can segment this and then deliver highly effective segmented communication. So if you're wanting to remind the at-risk group of your store, you might want to send them personalized loyalty emails, reminding them about the brand, as we kind of mentioned before. Or if it's your most loyal customer segment you're wanting to focus on, these guys, they love your brand and they love your brand for a reason. So you want to maybe reach out to them and ask them for their opinion, even on maybe what they want to see you launch next, or feedback on a particular product. So it's a really good way for you to generate a feedback loop with that customer segment. They want to feel valued because they're your most loyal customers for a reason. So it's a really, really good way for you to build upon that as well, and just to further generate their loyalty.
Thank you, Kerri and Lewis, for that. So just to go over the main takeaways from today's episode. So ensuring that your first-time buyers become repeat customers. So we've got 5 main approaches to doing that. So encourage that your guest shoppers sign up to your loyalty program, number 1. Number 2, offer exclusive rewards and perks to keep your members engaged. Number 3, turn your new customers into vocal brand advocates to increase acquisition. 4, build a brand community to enhance their loyalty and engagement with your brand. And number 5, segment your customers to increase redemption. And with that, your first-time buyers will be coming back again and again.
Exactly.
I will.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time, Kerri. Appreciate you coming on.
Kerri,
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Where do people go if they want to find out more about LoyaltyLion and what you do?
So you can you can head straight to our website, which is LoyaltyLion.com, or if you're wanting to reach out to me personally, then that is kerri.barnes@LoyaltyLion.com.
Superb.